Welcome to another edition of Ravens Roosting, brought to you by the Marlin Fitzwater Center for Communication. I'm Paul Jenkins, University librarian and Beatles scholar, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the song Eleanor Rigby, which I call Paul McCartney's 2-minute masterpiece. There is actually a statue of Eleanor Rigby that has been erected and is part of the landscape in Liverpool. That's how famous this fictional character has become. And the song is dedicated to all the lonely people and of the world. And so that's a very important point I make with my students in class, is sort of the universality of the song. So a little bit of background for you about the song. The original names that McCartney toyed with before settling on Eleanor Rigby were Ola Natungi, believe it or not, or Sweet Daisy Hawkins. So it's important to realize that these things don't come out of nowhere. There's numerous rough drafts, in some cases very rough. So there's a debate over Paul's inspiration for the name he finally did settle on. Was he inspired by the actress Eleanor Braun from the Help movie that he'd been part of the previous year? And did he get the Rigby part from a store called Rigby and Evans that he'd seen on his travels? Or did his subconscious somehow conjure up the memory of the grave in the Woolton Cemetery in Liverpool, the same place where he met John Lennon for the first time on July 6, 1957? And there in that cemetery is an actual gravestone of a woman named Eleanor Rigby. Years later, Paul claimed that he had no memory of actually seeing that gravestone. So McCartney composed the melody for the song on piano, actually, at first, at the Asher household. Jane Asher was his girlfriend at the time, and he was actually living with her family. There's a rare disagreement between John and Paul as to which of them was chiefly responsible for the lyrics. Usually in later years they recalled, oh, that was mainly my song, John would say, or that was mainly my song, Paul would say. Here there is some disagreement over who came up with some of the lines. It's mainly a Paul McCartney song, though. And Pete Shotton, a friend of John's, also maintained that he himself, Pete Shotton, contributed some ideas to the song. And there's been some speculation that Ringo actually came up with the line, darning his socks in the night. So it's truly a team effort in some ways, although, again, mainly a McCartney song. And George Harrison contributed to the chorus as well. So it was recorded on April 28th and April 29th, 1966, along with June 6, 1966, the final recording. And it was released as a single on August 5th, 1966, along with the song Yellow Submarine. So the music of Eleanor Rigby is very interesting in itself. Earlier, the previous year, Paul McCartney had written a song called Yesterday, a very famous song, which employed a string quartet. Well, in this song, he asked his producer, George Martin, to actually employ a string octet, that is 2 string quartets, for a little fuller sound. It took the musicians 14 takes to get the result that Paul McCartney wanted. Paul wanted to take the bite out of the strings and not have any vibrato. He was very afraid at this point still of the Beatles being perceived as a non-rock and roll band. He didn't want it to sound too classical, although he was saying, give me a string octet. So engineer Jeff Emmerich placed the microphones very close to the string player's strings to get the effect that McCartney wanted. The sound of the music itself, which we can't play right now because of copyright reasons, but it's very hectoring and shrill. It's eerie, it's full of warning and foreboding, which fits the sentiments of the song, of course. So the song itself is only 22 lines, and there are only 2 characters in it. But boy, is there a lot in those 22 lines. Both characters are lonely, but in different ways. Eleanor is forced to live in a dream due to the fact that she apparently has no friends and has never known any kind of romantic love, and we'll pick up on that in a moment. Father Mackenzie, the cleric for whom she works, is also very lonely and, more importantly, disillusioned. He's apparently resigned himself to the fact that no one really values his work as a priest. He has apparently given up hope, as indicated by the line, "What does he care?" So now I'm actually going to go through the song sort of line by line the way I would with my students and give you some insights. So in the first two lines, which is the chorus, McCartney begins with the chorus, a technique that the Beatles first used with "She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah." And he asks us to reflect upon all the lonely people, and then proceeds to narrow it down to two of them who may represent all the lonely people in a sense. It's often misheard as "I" in the first two lines, but it's "Ah, look at all the lonely people," not "I, look at all the lonely people." So line 3 presents the first example of brilliant details in the song. Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice thrown during a wedding at the church. She's not part of the wedding party. She just has to clean up after it. And so we're immediately invited into her world through this detail. Line 4, McCartney tells us she lives in a dream. She's forced to seek solace in a dream world because the real world in which she works and walks is so dreary and friendless. She waits at the window, nice little alliteration there, by the way, a passive observer of life rather than a true participant in life. And the window separates her from the rest of the world, even though she can see through it. But she cannot penetrate it. In line 5, we're told that she wears a face that she keeps in a jar by the door. This is a kind of a mysterious line, and my students are often a little perplexed by it. What does it mean? Obviously, there's many possible meanings. She's covering up her real emotions with a facade. She's actually applying makeup. That's another more literal interpretation. But mainly, it's just a mask behind which she can hide. Her face is kept in a jar. There's lots of imagery of constriction and constraint in this song. She's very suppressed. She's very imprisoned. Line 6, who is it for? Is it for herself? Is it for Father Mackenzie? Is it for the outside world? There's lots of questions and question marks in this song. Very few answers. Lines 7 and 8, the chorus reappears, but McCartney this time adds, where do they come from and where do they all belong, these lonely people? These are questions to which he has no answers, of course, but he seems to care about finding an answer, though it's beyond him to propose an answer at this point. So now, in the middle of the song, line 9, we're introduced to Father Mackenzie. The song has been all about Eleanor Rigby at this point. McCartney wants to show us that the song is about lonely people, plural, not just one lonely person. No one hears his sermon and no one comes near him. There's a lot of nihilism in this song. There's a lack of belief in anything. No one hears his sermon, no one comes near him, and this detail indicates the degree of his loneliness. It also hints at the fact that the Beatles, while spiritual as individuals, did not endorse organized religion. In fact, earlier in 1966, in a March 4th interview with Maureen Cleave, John Lennon had famously claimed that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus, thus setting off a firestorm of controversy where many of their albums were burned in the United States, especially in states south of the Mason-Dixon line. So line 10, another no one pops up, no one comes near, indicating that Father Mackenzie, like Eleanor, is solitary and isolated from the rest of society. Line 11 includes another great little detail. McCartney asks us to regard the cleric, look at him working. We're invited again into his world, just as we have been invited into Eleanor's world earlier. We, like Eleanor, are observers at this point. The fact that Father Mackenzie darns his own socks, and this is the detail that some people say Ringo might have come up with, details the extent of his isolation and loneliness, plus the fact that he doesn't have anything better to do. It also echoes the phrase, no one, that has already been used in the previous two lines. McCartney now adds that nobody is there when he does the tailoring itself, the darning. Line 12, another nihilistic element here. What does he care? It's a key phrase that indicates how Father Mackenzie has given up and probably lost his faith. Thus, McCartney hints at a nihilistic world where not even the clergy still believe in their mission, let alone people believing in Christianity or other organized religions. Lines 13 through 16, the chorus is further reinforced, and before we turn to the final parts of the song, the conclusion, line 17, where we learn that Eleanor has died, We're not privy to the cause of death, but we can conclude that she died of hopelessness or loneliness. Perhaps even of a broken heart, though interestingly, McCartney sidesteps what would have been a more obvious and cliche-written cause, her unrequited love for Father Mackenzie. He's just leaving that to kind of speculate on or guess at. No love figure is mentioned at all in the song, as a matter of fact. The fact that she died in the church also reinforces the earlier notion that the church itself is moribund or dead or obsolete. Her only possession at the end is her name itself, and it doesn't seem to mean much to anyone anyway. In line 18, the word nobody is used again, echoing the earlier notion that no one comes near Father Mackenzie in line 10. And nobody comes to Eleanor Rigby's funeral except for Father Mackenzie himself, who holds the service and wipes the dirt from his hands at the end of the service, thus ridding himself of any trace of Eleanor Rigby. There's also, for Freudians out there, the line "nobody came" indicates a lack of sexual fulfillment for either one of the characters in the song. So I hope this brief look at Eleanor Rigby has given you more to think about, and when you listen to other Beatles songs, especially from their later period, you can get a sense of their true artistry and that they weren't only brilliant musicians, but also brilliant lyricists. Thank you very much.